They give you headlines, we give you the map. They show you the symptoms, we show you the trap. From the corridors of Brussels to the South China Sea, everything is connected, nothing is free. Supply chains breaking, alliances shifting, the tectonic plates of power are drifting. You need to understand the game. The players change, the rules remain the same. The morning briefing, geopolitics unmasked, no filter, no fluff, just the hard facts task. Deep dive, research the signal and the noise. Prepare for the day, make the smartest choice. This is your daily reality check. Let's begin.
I believe the raw velocity, the inherent transparency, and the wide participation of these decentralized open source communities provide a far more robust path forward. And that resilience is critical, not just for innovation, but maybe counterintuitively for mitigating the very complex risk that these systems pose.
Well, let's look at the evidence that I think mandates this kind of strategic centralization. We're not dealing with simple software anymore. We are dealing with frontier intelligence. The scope and the potential risks involved, they really demand state-level coordination. The U.S. DOE's Genesis mission formalizes this. It's a strategic partnership that links the national research infrastructure with, 24 key industry players, including giants like OpenAI, Anthropic, NVIDIA, and Microsoft. So my core argument here is that this centralization is necessary because the objectives are these grand scientific challenges, establishing a national AI platform for high-stakes discovery in areas like nuclear fusion, advanced material science, and biosafety. These goals are just too complex, too long-term, and way too resource-intensive for any single commercial lab that's operating under quarterly pressures. And beyond that, security dictates control. The system card for GPT 5.2 Codex classifies it as having high capability in biology. So even if it's currently below some hypothetical threshold for autonomous self-replication, that high capability demands controlled, dedicated environments and sandboxing. Anthropic's decision to commit dedicated Claude models and engineering teams to work exclusively within national labs, well, that just confirms this strategic necessity for me.
Okay, that's a compelling argument. That's based on scale and perceived risk. But I would frame it differently. While centralization attempts to impose control, it inevitably introduces bureaucracy that slows down iteration, and it concentrates failure. I mean, if your one national platform has a systemic weakness, that weakness affects absolutely everything. Decentralized innovation, on the other hand, drives to critical, agile breakthroughs that you need for both performance and for true security. You can see this agility right now in the open source domain. It's advancing practical, agentic capability at an incredible clip. Take the Active Pieces repository. This is basically a decentralized automation platform that, by integrating the Model Context Protocol, it allows LLM agents, doesn't matter if it's Claude or an open source model like Cursor, to orchestrate these complex, multi-step actions across over 400 separate servers. They are autonomously managing workflows without any proprietary middleman or, centralized oversight. This is highly effective, highly decentralized AI application scaling that a state mandate just cannot keep up with. And we see the same pattern in architectural breakthroughs, too. I mean, look at SmallDocLink 256M. Independent teams built this model using a novel doc tag format to drastically reduce hallucinations and increase efficiency in complex document conversion. That kind of grassroots optimization is just faster and more adaptive than any centralized, state-mandated standard could be.
I appreciate the point about application agility and the speed of optimization in the open source community. I do. But we have to turn our focus entirely toward catastrophic risk mitigation. While decentralized security research is great at finding zero-day exploits and immediate flaws, it is fundamentally inadequate to protect against the catastrophic risks posed by high-capability frontier models in sensitive domains. We know the capability exists in biology. With GPT 5.2 Codex, the Genesis mission's centralized control, its sandboxing, and its enormous resource allocation are necessary to ensure that capability is never misused.
I disagree on that point. A centralized defense mechanism is inherently brittle.
It's sort of like building one massive firewall that becomes this single, very lucrative target for malicious actors. And when that monolithic wall is breached, the failure is total. History shows us that these centralized defenses almost always lag behind the actual threat landscape. We saw this perfectly illustrated with the analysis of the bad Likert judge jailbreak technique. What was so revealing about that exploit is that it bypassed the filtering mechanisms of even a sophisticated model like DeepSeek, not through complex coding, but by exploiting simple social engineering role-playing frameworks. The model's filters were designed to catch explicit, harmful instruction, right? But when the model was asked to role-play a Likert judge assessing the quality of a toxic query, it generated the harmful content because it was prioritizing its internal role-playing score over the safety filters. The true resilience against that level of social engineering, it comes from distributed, transparent security innovation.
And what specific decentralized solution do you propose for an existential risk scenario?
I propose rapidly deployed open-source innovations like the predictive concept decoders, or PCDs. These were developed by academic teams at UC Berkeley and MIT. And PCDs are groundbreaking because they don't wait for the output to be generated and then try to filter it. Instead, they provide a way to look inside the model's brain, to interpret the internal activations, and to detect latent harmful concepts like violence or explosives before the output is even formulated. This is a fundamentally scalable and automated security architecture, and crucially, it originated outside of any state mandate, which proves that distributed expertise is what generates true resilient security.
Academic models like PCDs are certainly invaluable intellectual property, but that's the precise distinction. They provide the concept. Implementing that concept into secure, standardized, and auditable infrastructure across the vast network of sensitive national labs, well, that requires the very coordination that Genesis mandates. Decentralized innovation identifies the vulnerability and suggests a solution, but centralization ensures that essential security standards, like integrating PCD-type systems, are universally adopted and rigorously enforced across critical state compute resources. It stops them from being selectively implemented or just ignored by disparate, commercially driven entities. We need the scale of government to mandate the defense that the academy invents.
Okay, but if we shift focus from risk assessment to pure scientific output, I find the centralized approach equally limited. You argue Genesis accelerates scientific breakthroughs, but simply centralizing compute only guarantees greater resource deployment, not higher quality research. New industry benchmarks, specifically FrontierCS and OpenAI's own Frontier Science, they highlight a massive problem that resource density alone is not going to solve. These benchmarks show that models like GPT 5.2 are fantastic at structured problems. They achieve high scores, 77.1% on tests like International Science Olympiad problems. These are problems with known structures. But they fail dramatically, dropping to 25.3% when faced with what's called the ambiguity barrier. And this is the core issue. The ambiguity barrier represents open, unstructured, real-world problems that require navigating uncertainty and generating true scientific innovation. You can't close that gap by just funneling more compute through the DOE. It points to a fundamental limitation in the current proprietary paradigm.
That is compelling data regarding the ambiguity barrier, and it's a critique we have to take seriously. However, the problem Genesis is designed to solve isn't just about raw compute. It's about directed focus and exclusive data access. By integrating the proprietary expertise of the private sector, the engineering teams and models behind GPT 5.2 and Claude, directly with the immense, unique datasets and specific high-impact scientific objectives of our national labs, the Genesis mission forces these advanced models to specialize on that precise type of real-world scientific uncertainty that exists in fusion and biosafety. And we also can't ignore the efficiency gains already happening in the market that will inform Genesis. The rapid, incremental improvements we see, like the global rollout of Gemini 3 Flash, which focuses intensely on speed, low latency, and efficient multimodal reasoning, that suggests that commercial pressures are extremely effective drivers of optimized innovation. The centralized effort is designed to leverage and integrate these commercial advancements into a secure, directed platform.
See, I'm not convinced by the idea that leveraging commercial speed is going to close that scientific gap. Commercial drivers, by their very definition, prioritize speed and optimization, exactly what Gemini 3 Flash excels at, over the fundamental slow-burn research quality that you need to break the ambiguity barrier. The FrontierCS findings explicitly state that applying a larger reasoning budget, in other words, just throwing more time and compute at the problem, did not close the gap. True, non-obvious scientific innovation often emerges from smaller, intensely focused academic or open-source efforts that aren't constrained by the mission-driven, immediate needs of a large, coordinated state program. You're mistaking directed optimization for foundational discovery.
We also have to acknowledge the unavoidable geopolitical necessity that anchors this centralized approach. The Genesis mission serves as a core defensive measure against severe geopolitical supply chain risks. We've seen detailed reports confirming both NVIDIA and AMD are actively exploring the Intel 14A node for future chip fabrication. This signals a necessary and rapid diversification away from a reliance on TSMC due to, known regional stability concerns. The U.S. government needs the guaranteed high-end compute and secure domestic fabrication paths that the Genesis mission requires, which purely commercial, globalized markets cannot reliably guarantee during a crisis.
I see why you raise supply chain security, but the geopolitical strategy we're currently executing risks actively undermining its own goals. Specifically, the government's review of the NVIDIA H200 export exception to China, even when imposing a 25% fee, is a highly risky maneuver. While it's framed as this clever strategy to underpress Chinese domestic development, specifically rival chips like Huawei's Ascend, by offering a slightly superior, though expensive, taxed U.S. product, this action channels essential U.S. technology and, critically, the associated expertise and maintenance directly into a rival state, relying on market manipulation through strategic exports, rather than ensuring rock-solid domestic foundational strength through truly open and accelerated innovation. That exposes the U.S. to greater long-term dependence and risk.
I disagree fundamentally that this is a risk. I would frame this H200 export review as a calculated strategic move that actually complements Genesis perfectly. It is designed to bleed capital from domestic Chinese chip efforts by offering an external alternative that is just good enough to buy but priced to be painful. So it's market strategy complementing the domestic Genesis initiative. We use Genesis to secure our domestic cutting-edge resources within our national labs, and we use regulated commerce as a strategic offense to slow the independent technological acceleration of our rivals. It's not just defense, it's a coordinated two-pronged strategy.
But the potential for technological leakage and the financial resources it provides to the rival state, it introduces complexity and dependence exactly where clarity and accelerated self-sufficiency are needed most. The centralized state strategy is simultaneously trying to restrict and profit from its technology, which leads to inherent strategic contradictions.
I think this discussion clearly illustrates the profound and really unavoidable tension that's facing frontier AI development today. My position remains that while the velocity and application scaling of open source work is undeniable and it's valuable, the sheer complexity of frontier AI security and the necessity of tackling grand, existential scientific challenges, they require the coordinated, guaranteed power of the state, industry, and academia, as formalized by the Genesis mission. Centralization provides the necessary stability, security standardization, and long-term commitment that distributed commercial interest alone simply cannot match.
And I remain convinced that the dynamism, the transparency, and the agility that you need for both superior security, as proven by the fundamental effectiveness of innovations like predictive concept decoders, and for rapid, resilient application scaling, as we see in the active pieces MCP revolution, that all derives from decentralized activity. Centralization risks concentrating failures and, critically, slowing down the precise type of non-obvious, innovative research that the most demanding scientific benchmarks prove is still missing from the current proprietary, resource-heavy models.
The source material clearly illustrates this foundational tension between the push for coordinated national security and the powerful, distributed intelligence that's emerging from the global digital commons. It is a tension the listener must weigh carefully as these two powerful forces continue to shape the trajectory of global AI development.